Google decided that this was the last XL device that they would make, the Google Pixel 4 XL. They proceeded with just the Pixel 5 and making the Pixel 6 a Pro version rather than an XL version. But this also marked the end of a traditional Pixel. This was the first and last for a few things, which I'll talk about, but the main question to answer is, should you buy the Google Pixel 4 XL in 2022? Hello everyone, this is Matt from Real World Review, and today I'm going to answer if it is worth it as well as why you should consider buying this phone over other phones in its class. Let's get started just after you visit these socials listed above. I'll wait. Okay, let's get started. Now the specs are good, but also lacking. We start with the powerhouse, the Snapdragon 855 chip that features 6GB of RAM, as well as 64 or 128GB of UFS 2.1 storage, of course being non-expandable. This is powered by a small-ish 3700 mAh battery, as well as 18 watts of wired charging with wireless charging capability. The charging speed is good, but not spectacular. The battery life, however, is just alright. With Android 12 ruining battery stats, so it's kind of hard to see the actual screen on time, I was left with a weird situation, but you should expect 2 to 3 hours of screen on time even with this old battery. Overall, full day of battery life, but still not too difficult to drain in one day with heavy usage. It is a couple years old, so the drainage is expected and honestly felt like the Pixel 6 Pro's battery life. And it feels like the Pixel 4 I reviewed a couple months ago, which isn't entirely a terrible thing. Apps run fine with some lag in heavy apps, and game performance isn't really on the highest end, but it's still pretty good with minimal frame drops, as expected with this chip. This is thanks to that processor and decent enough RAM to where apps stay open unless you leave them alone for a while. It's kind of weird to see this happen on apps like YouTube, videos paused of course, while the iPhone will keep it cached for literally a day and will still go straight to it when you open up the app. Speaking of YouTube, you get a notchless and hole punchless 6.3-inch 1440p OLED display with 90Hz of refresh rate and 534 pixels per inch. While the forehead is kind of big, it's nice to have an uninterrupted screen. Well, to an extent. This is covered by Gorilla Glass 5, but those deep scratches still happen, so yeah. For me, all the specs internally are good, but not the most spectacular today. Moving outside, we get a matte finish metal frame with the SIM card tray on the left side, while the right side is where the volume and power buttons are. The latter being a different color depending on your phone's color. On the bottom, we get the second loudspeaker and a slot for the microphone. The loudspeaker pairs with the top one to give you an almost stereo feel, with the top one sounding a little small, if that makes sense. Then the middle is where we get the USB-C 3.1 Gen 1 port, again allowing for 18 watts of charging. Sorry, USB-C 3.2 Gen 1 x 1. On the back, we either get a matte or glossy glass back, the white one being the former, and this one being the latter. Then there's the iconic camera square with the dual sensor, that flicker sensor, microphone, and dual LED flash that I never use. The G is the only branding on this phone, and I think that's kind of nice. Then we have two special things. One of them is the squeeze sensor, this one being the last Pixel device with that hardware, allowing you to activate Google Assistant by simply squeezing the phone. As time went on, this became redundant due to the numerous ways to activate the assistant. I can think of about 4 methods, but there's probably more out there. Then we have the Soli radar on the top, an awesome radar sensor that senses where you are so you can toggle audio, and that's about it. I mean, there are some other basic things that you can do, but ultimately it's a sensor that allows you to change music when you don't really want to. It's almost like a party trick type gimmick. The build feels good in the hand, and with a weight of 193 grams, it doesn't feel too heavy, at least when compared to modern large phones. This phone is also IP68 dust and water resistant, but given the age, I would take that claim with a grain of rice. See what I did there? Overall, the phone goes from normal to special to gimmicky, but I gotta say, I do miss the squeeze feature when I'm reviewing other Pixel phones that don't have it. It's a weird thing because I rarely ever use it, but I always miss it. The main reason why people want to buy these phones, but also a reason to look for another device. It isn't too surprising, but the Pixel 4 XL and Pixel 4 have the same sensors, even though the parts are physically different and not interchangeable for some reason. With this said, the rear sensors are a 12.2 megapixel wide-angle sensor, while the other is a 16 megapixel 2x telephoto lens, both with varying results, ironically. While it may not be obvious, overall the telephoto shots look a little bit muted, where the wide sensor captures more colorful shots. It's not really a huge difference when testing it out, but it is there. Both features optical image stabilization, which is nice to see, but lacks 4K at 60 frames per second, just like the Pixel 3 series. Instead, we get 4K at 30 frames per second, which gives us decent video, but noticeably worse than other phones in its category. For the front, it is a standard 8 megapixel sensor that technically has a time of flight sensor in that array, which produces some nice portrait shots, but it is a fixed focus. This is actually worse for video, maxing out at 1080p 30 frames per second. But Pixel phones aren't made for videos, they're made for photos, so let's show you some of those. Enjoy. Basically, this is still a really good phone for photos, and even at the used price destroys a lot of other phones in its category. The lack of an ultra-wide sensor will be the death for some people, but for me, I could care less. I care a little, but not that much. The video aspect is what makes these cameras horrible in my eyes, because not only are the specs not 4K 60 frames per second, but video doesn't really even look that good in the first place. Overall, nice cameras that hold up well in 2022, but video is, well, that hasn't changed. Now you've made it to the end where I have my last-ditch effort to beg you into buying this phone, or looking into this phone at least. Well, the thing is, this is a Pixel phone. This is the closest you'll get to the latest software on launch, even quicker than the Pixel 6 series. But we are running Android 12, this one being the April security patch, and probably having the June one by the time I post this video. And if that matters to you, there's only a few phones that can do that. The software experience is elegant with the always-on display, gestures, and overall smoothness of the operating system, boosted by that 90Hz refresh rate. Also, a little bit of the side note, with that Sully radar and the time of flight sensor, you technically get face unlock, which is technically the only face unlock that they've ever been able to do on a Pixel, and it's the first and last phone to do that. Besides the OnePlus 7 Pro, this might be the only old phone that I would want to actually daily drive because of that screen. All in all, it's kind of a basic phone, but the customization you get is pretty well rounded, and thanks to XDA developers, can be expanded if you buy the non-branded version. This phone lacks 5G, which is expected, but the LTE is alright. I never really had any signal issues like I did on the Pixel 4. I joke about the RAM, but I really didn't have any issues with it, kind of like the battery. Okay, the battery isn't the best, and 18 watts of charging is decent. My biggest issue, especially using 128GB or 256GB phones recently, is the 64GB of built-in memory is not enough storage, though it was the last flagship Pixel to have this storage size. But then you look at the competition. The iPhone 11 Pro Max runs a little under $600, while the S10 Plus is a high $200 range, and even the OnePlus 7 Pro is about $200 in good condition, while the Pixel 4 XL can be found in the mid-$100 range. And yeah, I'm gonna say it, the Pixel 4 XL camera is technically better than all of those except maybe the iPhone. Yep. Video camera though, I would never pick this phone even if it was free. The price is the deciding factor for most people, and I feel good and bad for the people that are buying this phone. I feel good knowing that this phone is under $200 and it'll be an amazing choice for a lot of people that want to create or just have a well-rounded phone. But I also feel bad for those that bought this phone at retail price. I was almost that person and I'm glad I didn't do it. Just like how I never bought any other Pixel phones. I mean, I did with the Pixel 4a, but that phone only lost about $150 in value, not $700. And that's my review of the Google Pixel 4 XL, the best, biggest budget camera phone out there. But what do you think? Was I too harsh on this phone? Let me know in the comment section below, and as always, thanks for subscribing. Got you there. Thanks for watching.